as a Black woman, I think it goes without saying that you always feel that you need to prove yourself.
That's one of the reasons we set up this podcast.
Yes.
We're not telling our stories. They won't tell it, or if they do, it'll be a very different narrative.
Or take credit for it.
Absolutely. It's how do you ensure that you are visible?
So I worked part-time and I studied part-time. A lot of rejection letters. And not everyone makes it.
Did what you had to.
I did what I had to do.
Hi everyone, we're back with season 2, and after a short break, I'm really looking forward to the exciting lineup of guests on Say.Africa. Now, it's been a difficult few months, and I think with what's happening around the world that I've just had to pause and reset my intentions. And with that, I hope this season will bring even more value to you, to all of you watching and listening. Now, the aim of Say.Africa is to have conversations that inspire success and build community. And my guest today is no stranger to big and small stages. And when I was first introduced to her, it felt like I was meeting an old friend. She's warm, she's generous, and might I add, an amazing award-winning lawyer. Thenji Moyo, welcome to Say.Africa.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
Wonderful. Now, Thenji, as we start the year, this is such a good place to be starting. I know that you're an employment lawyer. We're going to be diving into that. But I want to start at the very beginning. My belief is that our childhood shapes and informs a lot of who we are today. So take us to the beginning. Take us to where you were raised, what the early parts of life was like for you.
Okay, so I was born in London, in the United Kingdom, and I am born of Zimbabwean parents. Soon after Zimbabwe became independent, my parents decided that they wanted to go back to Africa. So as a small child, we packed our bags and left the United Kingdom. And I was raised in Africa. So that's really the formative environment for me. Growing up in Zimbabwe in the 80s was amazing. We had a life of privilege. We had family around us, which is always important, and perhaps something that I miss living in the UAE as an expat.
Far removed from the family.
Far removed from family. That's obviously something that you miss.
Wonderful. Before we sort of get into that, was that usual for Zimbabweans, maybe in the UK, to then move back post-independence?
Very common. So a lot of friends that I have were actually born in the UK as well.
Okay.
So it wasn't uncommon. If you look in the 70s, there was a move from Rhodesia at the time to go to the United Kingdom. My mum was a student, she was a nurse. My father also studied in the United Kingdom, so it was very common.
Okay.
And I suppose it was the excitement of we're free, we have opportunities in our home country. So there was actually a mad rush, I would say, between 1980 and 85. You find a lot of families move back home to grasp those opportunities.
Wonderful. And what was life like? So you went back to school. How was that transition? Was it difficult settling back home?
Well, it wasn't. I don't remember it to be too difficult. We had good schools, good friends. I suppose for Zimbabweans, when you look back, it was a period of transformation. So it was the first time for, African children to enter the former white schools. So there was that transition period.
Any frictions at the time?
I think there were frictions when I look back. For example, I just remember comments made by my mother, who was quite an independent, Black, strong woman. I remember, for example, her coming from a school play and being really upset. And I had a wonderful time at this play. I thought I did exceptionally well. And I remember saying, what was the problem? And she said, well, a lot of the African children had parts of, they were standing as trees or snail. You didn't, right, because they identified with children coming from the UK. So yes, when I think back and think about how we were streamed academically. You would find most of the African children in one class and most of the non-African, non-black
Okay.
students in another class. So there
There's
were
some
issues.
divisions that
There
still
was there was
happen.
divisions. There was divisions, but I think once as children we were able to work through. So because of the integration that I had, I don't think I saw it as a barrier, despite the issues that were there.
Wonderful. And do you come from a big family? Siblings?
Yeah, so I have three, so two brothers. I'm the middle child from my parents. And I was the only girl raised as the only girl. My father had other children, so I have two half step siblings, a younger sister and a brother. But we were eventually kind of grew up as one family, so I think my father did really well to integrate us.
Fantastic. And so did you then study, what was the system like? Was this a British system? Was it a local education system? What was that like?
Very much British.
Okay.
So we followed Cambridge, we did GCSEs, A levels. So you find that it was very easy for children coming from Zimbabwe to go back to the UK and just go straight into the system because it was a British education.
Okay, wonderful. And so how old were you said, when you moved back?
So I was about 6, 7.
Okay, so
Went
still quite young.
still quite young.
Okay.
Went into primary school and also had my secondary education in Zimbabwe as well.
Okay, wonderful. Then what? Where did the journey take you post high school?
Yeah, so the journey then evolved. My mother being a dean of students, so she was in the education system.
Okay.
First female dean in Zimbabwe, so we're decorated for that.
Congratulations to her.
Yes. So we moved to South Africa. She decided that she wanted to explore something different. So that move took us to the Eastern Cape in South Africa. And I remember having a conversation with her after I finished school, and I was like, I want to be a journalist. I think I'd be amazing. And she said, well, do the application form, which I think in hindsight, she probably just ripped because she was determined that I would be a lawyer.
Okay, so she planted that seed then?
She
It was her dream.
She didn't plant
her
the
idea.
seed. Yeah, it was, I think there was that mindset that you must be a professional. And I certainly was raised by a woman who wanted me to be a professional. And she applied for me and said, oh, you've been accepted into law school, off you go at this university. So that's basically my story of how I ended up doing law.
Okay, and so you did your law degree in South Africa?
I did. So it was the Roman Dutch law. That's what you have in South Africa, the LLB. I went to a former Afrikaans university. So again, when I moved to South Africa, it was going through the period of transformation as well. So that
You're just following transformation.
I'm just following
aren't you?
transformation, which again was interesting. A lot of the exam papers that we had were in English and Afrikaans.
Okay.
Sometimes students would ask questions in Afrikaans and the explanation would be in Afrikaans. So, there were some issues there, teething issues when we were going through the transformation process.
And did you understand any Afrikaans?
I didn't understand Afrikaans as coming, as a foreigner coming into South Africa. So it was an enjoyable experience in the heart of the Eastern Cape. I speak Ndebele, which is a dialect in Zimbabwe. So when I moved to South Africa, it is quite similar because it's one of the Bantu languages.
Okay.
And I was in the heart of the Eastern Cape and quite quickly learned Xhosa.
Okay.
So a language with a click. And yeah, I enjoyed my years there until I qualified and was forced, I think, to go back to the UK because to get onto the next stage, I needed to train. And it made sense being a British citizen to go back to the UK.
Wonderful. What was that return, if you like? What was that like?
It was an easy transition. There are many Zimbabweans in the UK, so I have a lot of family. My brother was already there. So the transition was easy, just in terms of moving and friends from high school
Okay.
and friends, they were all there. So I had actually a lot of family.
Okay.
And because of the issues that were happening in Zimbabwe, a lot of people were moving to the UK anyway. So that transition wasn't too difficult. As a lawyer,
Okay.
or an aspiring lawyer at the time, yes, I had to do a conversion course and so forth because I was moving from Roman Dutch law to the British system. So that was hard, that was expensive process and long. And then the challenges that a lot of youth have who are aspiring to be lawyers is getting a training contract and so forth. So that's like the articles. So that's really highly competitive. But that was a process that I had to undergo as well.
Okay. Would you say there were many Zimbabweans who were charting the same path as you?
There were many studying law.
Okay.
Some they had studied their first degree in the UK. So yes, I came across a few. I know someone that I went to school with, and she's a judge, well-decorated judge in the United Kingdom. So yes, absolutely, there were some that were interested in the profession.
Wonderful. Um, then how long did you stay in the UK?
Oh, I was in the UK for many years before I came here. So I would say about 12 years. So that process was long.
Okay. Maybe
Looking
share a
for,
little bit about what working was like in the UK.
yeah, so as soon as I got to the United Kingdom, I was like, I need to work. So I worked in a call center. I did
Okay.
all sorts of jobs
Okay.
to get by. But I was extremely focused on qualifying.
Okay.
So I worked part-time and I studied
Did
part-time.
what you have to.
I did what I had to do to get in there. The process for training contracts is very, very tough
And when you
and
say tough,
extremely
so
competitive.
I'm not from that background. What is
Yeah,
that? What does tough mean?
it's competitive.
Okay.
So, you have thousands and thousands of graduates each year and maybe 5,000 training contracts. So a lot of rejection letters.
Mm,
And not everyone makes it. So I was still determined to get into the profession one way or the other.
okay.
And I started working as a paralegal in a high street in Bedford, small high street in Bedford. But one of the opportunities I took up, I think, before that was the vacation placement internship. So I highly, highly recommend anyone who's at university to start the free unpaid internships, because those opportunities really give you a foot in the door
That's
to speak to the right people and to experience exactly what it is to be a lawyer.
that's great advice. The idea is about getting your foot through the door.
Absolutely. I really can't recommend it enough, especially in this competitive
Mhm.
space. Because what you learn at university is all great, but it's theory.
Yep.
You really want the practical experience, what it is to be in court and what it is to sit and listen to a client give their witness statement and so forth. So those skills are extremely valuable. So I had an amazing lady who said, your grades are great, but you have no experience.
Mm.
Go and work at a law firm. And it was supposed to be just 2 weeks. But that is the same law firm that I ended up working for, qualifying as a solicitor. So I think I worked over 6 years in total.
Oh wow. Okay.
And that was on the back of a 2-week vacation placement.
That's incredible. So whenever I hear law and court, suits comes to
Yeah.
mind. I know the reality isn't
It's really not that
quite like
glamorous.
that. Wonderful. Okay,
Yeah.
so started in the UK, moved back to Zimbabwe, South Africa a bit, and then back to the UK. Interesting. How did the UK come about? Sorry, how did the UAE come about?
So I've always wanted to travel further ashore. That's always been, and I suppose it's because I've lived in so many countries.
Okay.
I loved the UK. I loved the opportunities that I had. I qualified as a lawyer, and I learned all the basic skills to be a lawyer from the UK in amazing law firms. But I always had an interest in the Middle East.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
I did. I'd heard amazing things. So when I moved out, it was, oh, let me just go and see what it's like for a year.
Had you
Um,
been on holiday at the very least?
no, I hadn't even been on holiday,
Okay.
but I had heard about the opportunities that the Middle East was giving to expats.
Okay.
And it was always on my radar. And literally, it was, I'm going to come up for a year, see what it's like, and go back to the UK.
Wonderful. So, Thenji, what does competitiveness then mean to you? It seems like at so many junctions you are faced with having to work through this very competitive environment.
Well, I think if we start from the beginning, you always, as a woman, you're competing. As a girl, you're competing. Sometimes even within your family, you're competing. Whether it's for attention, whether it's for opportunities,
Right.
and I think that becomes ingrained in you. So when I spoke about the competition for a training contract, you need to think, how am I going to stand out from the crowd? And that's really difficult. So you need to find your niche, whatever your niche is. I found that my kind of superpower was actually connecting with people. So
Okay.
I found that I needed to be in front of people to make that connection. And this is why I always recommend internships. It wasn't about my good grades. It was actually my ability to go in, connect with the partner, and show the level of enthusiasm that I had. So find your niche, because I think competitive and overcoming competitiveness is different for you, for me, for somebody else. And I say that even when I look at students coming out of university, find a way to stand out. Now we've got technology, we
Right.
have social media, we have LinkedIn, we have the ability for people to write papers and articles. Find your niche, find a way for you to stand out and be, I want that person for my role.
That is so interesting. I'm also constantly advising, I've got younger brothers and I've got, lots of young people around me. It's how do you ensure that you are visible? I think the relationship aspect is very, very key. And nowadays, competition isn't just within your city or even your country, given technology, really competition is global, But at the same time, we're then able to also reach out to people in all parts of the world. Are you using technology to suit you? How are you being visible? Thanks for sharing that. So you said the UAE was always, or rather the Middle East, this region was always a place that you were interested in. You'd never been here. So how did you go about pursuing an opportunity to then land you to moving to the UAE?
So when I moved to the UAE, the first thing I did was to network. So I was advised to go to BNI, which is a networking platform.
Of course. That was
Um,
started by a Kenyan.
Was it? I didn't
Yes,
know
yes,
that. I
yes.
didn't know that at all. So I remember going to BNI and beelining straight for the lawyer in the
Okay.
room, James Berry, and I was like, "Hi, I'm here."
Do you remember what chapter you were with?
It was Falcons.
Okay.
Falcons. I went as a visitor.
Okay.
So shout out to Falcons. And I approached the lawyer in the room and I said, "Look, I'm here. I'm looking for a job." And his response was, "Oh, I'm not looking at the moment, but let me help you. Send me your CV and so forth, and I can see if I can give you some exposure." So he was really kind.
Very nice.
And he went back to the office, and I sent him my CV, and he emailed back straight away and said, "The lawyer that I had has just resigned. Do you want to come in?" So
You just
it's
never
about
know, right?
you just never know. And that's how I got my first role in the UAE and haven't looked back. So I've had amazing opportunities working for local firms, for international firms, and really enjoyed the opportunities that the UAE has provided me with.
That's amazing. And so you've never looked back to consider maybe going into journalism or media of some sorts. Once you got into law, was that the only thing then?
Yeah, I think what I recognized is as a lawyer,
Mm,
you have the opportunity to do a lot.
okay.
So, as a lawyer, you can still write articles, you can still be a journalist if you want
Yeah.
to. That niche has always been, a good platform for other opportunities.
Okay. And tell me why you then decided to specialize in employment law.
Employment. Employment was a passion, so I
Okay.
took it as an elective
Okay.
when I was at university, and I really enjoyed it. I
Okay.
thought it was interesting. And when I started at my first big law firm in London, I went into the employment department and never looked back.
Okay.
I started off as a trade union lawyer, which basically means it was all about justice for the people. And employment rights was booming at the time in the UK. In the UK, there was equal pay claims, there was back pay for pension claims. There
Okay.
was so much going
Okay.
on, and I decided this is the area that I was going to specialize and stay in.
Wonderful. Now, what advice would you have for the African community in that space of looking at employment, whether it's contracts and things of that nature?
Employment law is really fundamental. If you look at people coming to the UAE, most people have come for work. If it's not for you, it might be someone in your family, your husband, your
Absolutely.
father.
Absolutely.
So it's
I mean,
really,
now there's a bit more in terms of ways that we can be here, but you're absolutely right. It's
well,
tagged to
it's tagged
business
to,
or work.
it's
Yeah,
tagged to. So either you're opening up a company,
correct.
so it's still important for you to address the employment law
Absolutely.
issues. So they're fundamental.
Okay.
I think they're fundamental. I feel the people who are actually able to benefit more are people who actually have a consultation before they move to the UAE and ask about, what compensation looks like, what are the benefits that you get, and also understand, perhaps if I'm leaving another jurisdiction, what am I gaining when I come to the UAE? I think that's really important. If you're setting up a business, it's important to know what you need to pay your employees and so forth to
Very,
avoid issues.
very critical. And how would one go about getting that advice?
Well, there's a lot online.
Okay.
We publish articles that will at least give you guidance. But of
Okay.
course, if you need specific advice for your own circumstances,
Right.
you'd need to take legal advice. And it is really well worth it.
Okay.
A lot of contracts people are signing up to are horrendous. And, you're only really in a strong position to negotiate before you step in that
At the
door.
start, absolutely.
Afterwards is completely
Absolutely. Yeah.
different. And I think companies also want to find ways about attracting top talent. So, it's great that HR managers will contact us and say, we want great benefits. What can we do? What's going on in the market?
Also,
Is
they
it
do consult with
Oh,
you.
they do,
Okay.
absolutely. So, I serve a mixed bag. It's not just employees; it's
Okay.
also companies as
Okay.
well. And that's really important work because when you're dealing with companies, decision makers, and HR, it's all about work culture and promoting best practices.
That's incredible. Now, I mentioned at the start that you're an award-winning lawyer. I know there's just 2 awards in 2023 alone.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about what these awards were for and what it means for, your industry or your career.
Yeah. Well, last year we won the Mental Awards.
Okay.
Very excited about that because it was all around mental health in the workplace.
That's incredible.
I see a lot of employees that are suffering from depression. They're undergoing counseling, medical treatment because of toxic work environment. Okay.
That's a big one.
It's a big one. So I am an advocate around psychological safety in the workplace.
Okay.
And it's been an amazing journey. A lot of companies are recognizing that if they want to get the best out of their employees, what they really need to do is invest on their mental health. And what does that look like? It's supporting them just in terms of making sure their overall well-being is catered for, We've done training on bullying and harassment in the workplace, which is well received.
That's incredible.
Giving employees the opportunity to share their experiences. We talk about unconscious bias in the workplace, what that looks like. We're an expat community, so what you've got like 54 nationalities in one office. That will come with issues that we need to
Oh, I
address.
can
Of
only
course it
imagine.
does.
I can only imagine.
And that's normal. So forward-thinking companies are like, okay, what do we need to do to address it? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what bullying and harassment looks like. Let's talk about what discrimination looks like.
Right.
And only when we have these real conversations are we able to make policies that change the culture in the workforce. So I'm pleased to say that there's a lot of work in that space, and we were recognized for being advocates around that.
That's
And I was
amazing.
absolutely delighted to see the law changed recently that basically says you cannot terminate an employee that's suffering from a mental health condition.
That's
So
incredible.
even the law is changing. So
That
here we
is
go.
incredible. I mean, a few years ago, this was
Yeah.
unheard of.
Absolutely. It was unheard of. I had a lady who was clearly suffering from a medical condition, a mental health condition. And she was terminated because she was intoxicated in the workplace. So, we had to address this and say, look, she's on a very serious medication and this is what she was diagnosed with. And no, you cannot terminate her for gross misconduct for this. But these are some of the cases that we've dealt with in the past.
That's absolutely incredible. And so you're doing what? Workshops, or you're advising them to speak to experts? What does that look like?
So workshops means going in, having sessions with the employees.
Okay.
It's usually half a day sessions, and we just talk about real life examples in the workplace.
Okay.
People feel bullied and harassed in various ways. Maybe I wasn't invited to a meeting. Maybe it's the emails that you send me after hours. Maybe it's the fact that you have socials every Friday when I'm going to the mosque.
Yes.
It might be anything. So once we start to have these real conversations about what's happening in the workplace, can we start to address the culture?
Right.
And many organizations have amazing policies, but they don't police them. So meaning employees have never seen these policies. So
Right.
there's no point having great policies. They're not really
It's part of a thick handbook that, nobody
exactly.
goes
No
through
one's
it.
seen the handbook. So we bring those policies to life.
Okay.
We put them on the screen, say, this is actually a policy. Have you seen this?
Okay.
And people read, oh, I've never seen this. Actually, you, it was part of your induction. So really bringing the safety that the company stands for, the policies or the values
Right.
to the forefront.
Right. That's incredible. So that's one award. What was the other one?
So the other one I won last year was a really interesting. It was, they called it the prestigious award, but it was really for African leaders in the diaspora
Okay.
that were making an impact in the community.
Amazing. And we know you're definitely making an impact.
Yeah, I hope so, and I hope to do more.
Oh, you are. You are. You know what? When I was asking around the network, and how we get guests really is, us speaking to people, and we say, like, who do you want us to interview? And your name kept being echoed. So there you go.
Thank you so much. So this was really around pro bono work that we do. We do a lot of pro bono work with the DMCC, which is a free zone.
Okay.
We offer webinars, and I sit on the advisory board of Evolving Women.
Okay.
So Evolving Women is an organization that is amazing and really should get more acknowledgement for the work that they do for African women.
Tell us, what is Evolving Women?
So Evolving Women was founded by an Italian lady, Say Rico. And what Evolving Women does is it reaches out to African women coming from perhaps disadvantaged backgrounds, that are perhaps unemployed, dropped out of school, looking at the 25 to 35 demographic, I would say, and really giving them the opportunity to come to the UAE and start working. So most of the ladies on the program, we've crossed the 1,000 lady mark.
Are these all people in the
in the
UAE?
UAE, working
That
in
is
hospitality,
incredible.
mostly working in hospitality,
Okay.
and really giving them an opportunity. The idea was for the ladies to be on a program for 2 years.
Okay.
During the 2 years, they work in hospitality, but they also have training. So it might be on financial planning
Okay.
and so forth, how to save money, be a barrister. I think some ladies were learning how to collect honey from bees. And there's so many, it's such an enriched
That's
program
incredible.
that I'm extremely, extremely proud to be part of. And the whole idea is for ladies to come out to the UAE and go back to their home countries with the skills that they have learned and gained. So sitting on the advisory board and actually speaking to the women
Right.
that currently we have 9 countries,
Okay.
and speaking to the women has been phenomenal.
That is incredible. And how would one go about being part of this community?
Um, Contact Asia
Okay.
Rico.
Okay.
You should probably really get in touch with her because she is making an impact
Wonderful. We'll
in
definitely
Africa.
add her details to the show notes.
Absolutely. Get in touch with Evolving Women, see if you can be part of the program. There are various ways. And we have several partners looking for more partners. A lot of organizations have come forward and really gotten involved. Off the top of my head, Accenture has really
Fantastic.
spent hours and hours of work really trying to promote the program. So it's fantastic.
That's wonderful. Now, I know you're not just a lawyer. You're doing so many things. Maybe share a little bit about, I know you're involved with the Zimbabwean Business Council. I know that you're a businesswoman. Tell us a little bit more about these other wonderful achievements that you've got
Yeah.
running alongside
Alongside everything else. So yes, the Zimbabwe Business Council was something that I was extremely delighted to be part of. So being British by birth, I have always attended the BBG networking sessions, and I've
Tell us what the
seen
BBG.
British Business Council.
Okay.
A group. I've attended a lot of their events and so forth. So I've actually seen how other communities are really coming together to shape businesses in the UAE.
Okay.
So I met a group of enthusiastic Zimbabweans who were like, actually, we want to open the Zimbabwean Business Council. What do you think?
Fantastic.
So I became part of the steering committee.
Okay.
We mobilized people in business, professionals, got trade licenses together and marched off to Dubai Chambers. And a year later, we were recognized as, I think, the third business council in the UAE. So that's a tremendous, tremendous achievement.
Absolutely.
And I hadn't thought of being a businesswoman at all. And it was
Okay.
on the back of that where I
Sure.
was like, okay, actually, what am I passionate about outside of the law, completely outside of the law? And with my family, we set up Moyo Events. So it's an events company about decorations. We're having a few, events for women,
Right.
really aimed at empowerment. So I'm really excited about where that's going. Apart from the Zimbabwean Business Council, I'm also a lecturer at Middlesex University.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I kept that one in my back pocket. So I'm a lecturer on the master's program.
Okay.
So employment law. That's also been extremely rewarding because I get to meet people in industry, and it also keeps me up to date with what's happening from the legal world
Right.
internationally. So I'm a lecturer as well. I
The
enjoy
list
that.
goes
The list
on and
goes
on and on. Now back to your events company. I had the pleasure a
Yeah.
couple of days ago
Thank you.
to experience one of the wonderful events, which was quite timely, and we were working on vision boards and
Yes.
planning, 2024, and I'll circle back to that. Now we've spoken about all these incredible things that you've been doing, but I'm sure along the way there's been many challenges. I want to focus on some of the potential challenges that you faced here in the UAE as a Black woman, as a woman in law, businesswoman, a lecturer. All that makes Thenji.
Yeah.
One or two challenges that you can share and maybe how you've been able to overcome them.
Look, I think as a black woman, I think it goes without saying that you always feel that you need to prove yourself just a little bit more than
Okay.
perhaps your peers. And I don't think that's unique to my experience in the UAE. I think that's been a
It's a
life,
global
it's a
trend.
global trend. And I think, making yourself heard is something that I had to learn. It didn't come naturally. And I
Okay.
think as African women, we've spoken about, or certainly as Zimbabwean women, we've been brought up to have humility, to be quite to not shout our
Our
achievements,
praises. Okay.
our
Not sing our
praises.
praises.
It
Okay.
does it not to sing our praises. And what I learned is if you don't sing your praises, someone's going to sing their praises or get the opportunity before you.
Absolutely. That's
Um,
one of the reasons we set up this podcast. We're not
yes,
telling our stories.
you
They won't tell it, or if they do, it'll be a very different narrative.
or take credit for it.
Absolutely.
So I think part of the challenges was I started to realize that, hold on, this was my idea or this was my input, and I'm not being acknowledged for the work that I've done.
Right.
Um, and it really takes you to realize, put yourself forward, and really take stock of all the hard work that you've done. So
Right.
when I have paralegals, for example, and they put forward their appraisals and I see that they have perhaps undersold themselves, I always say go back and rewrite that and actually think about what you've achieved.
Mhm.
Because I think sometimes it's very easy to overlook your hard work. And if you overlook it, it will not be recognized. A lot of the time, I've been quite lucky actually. Sometimes, like sitting here, someone has actually said, bring her forward. But some people would have contacted you themselves and said, I actually want to have the
Mm.
opportunity. So I think it's really important to remind yourself about all your achievements, keep a diary, so that it doesn't go ignored, especially in the corporate world.
That's great advice. I know you shared some interesting stories when we met over the weekend. Um, and I'm trying to sort of pick up on that. Yes, having been born in the UK, I can tell, the accent's still there. How often are you then mistaken for being white British versus Zimbabwean? And maybe share some incidences.
Yeah, look, I think I have been mistaken. I think I told you about this story that I had when I picked up the phone. And in fact, a client called in one of my law firms many years ago. And I think she heard Angie,
Not
and not
Tenji.
Tenji. And I have a lisp, so that's my fault. Um, so, we spoke about her case and she's like, oh, can I come and see you now? And normally I say you need to book it through the office and so forth. And I said, you know what, just come, let me see you now. And I remember walking into that office and, and she was like, no, I'm waiting for Angie. And I said, no, this is me. We had this conversation. And her face, completely dropping with disappointment. And, I had to give her the opportunity to say, do you actually want to proceed or not? So until, you prove yourself, like, actually, I know what I'm talking about,
Mm.
or until you come well recommended, it's fair to say I don't have that problem now so much because I am recommended
Mm.
by other lawyers and, people in the business community now. But certainly as I was moving up the ranks, you have that challenge. And it comes with preconceived ideas about, perhaps an African lady and, will she be able to completely understand? But now I see my whole upbringing now as almost a superpower because, I relate to people coming from Europe as well as the same way I relate to people coming from Africa and so forth. So actually that my diverse
Right.
upbringing is now
An
really
advantage.
absolutely a real advantage.
But how would you advise, a young African who doesn't have that sort of leaning to be able to navigate similar challenges?
Mm. I mean, this is where I have difficulty, and I feel conflicted sometimes because a lot of the advice that's out there
Hmm.
is all about being your authentic self and,
Yes.
be you and walk into that room. And sometimes that doesn't work. I know certainly in the legal profession, if you turn up a certain way, your hairstyle a certain way, it's going to be difficult for you. So I always say, especially to the younger, really trying to go into the profession is actually, make sure that there's nothing to distract your chances
Right.
or the opportunities when you walk into that room. It's really for you to move up the ranks and then be in a position where you can be a decision maker. I'm fortunate enough now to be in that position
Right.
and be on the other side of the table.
Right.
So, somebody walking in with dreadlocks, so I'd probably say, "Oh, I really like your hair." And that wouldn't have happened 15 years ago when
Right.
I was, looking for opportunities. So there is an element of being able to fit in as far as possible, not to sell your soul,
Right.
but really do some sort of homework of the expectations, especially in stricter professions.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Yes, the come as you are, be very authentic. It's great and should be, but we also have to be mindful of the game that we're playing, right?
And it's a journey.
And it is a
We will
journey.
get to that stage, but we're
Absolutely.
not there yet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But having been in the UAE, despite all of that, do you think the opportunities that you've been able to achieve here would have been afforded, say, if you were back in the UK or even back on the continent?
I think I've had amazing opportunities in
Yeah.
the UAE. I think I've had more opportunities here than I might have had elsewhere. I sit in the DIFC, I sit on a government board, the DIFC Employee Workplace Savings Scheme Board, and I represent all the employees in the DIFC on that board.
That's incredible.
That's an incredible opportunity and achievement. I've had the opportunity to write books and get them published. I've had opportunity to consult on the law, before it's published.
Changing policy.
Yeah,
That's
I
amazing.
that I'm not sure I would have had those opportunities elsewhere. So I love the UAE. I love the opportunities that I personally have been able to have as an African woman, and I look forward to seeing the others coming up the ranks.
That's incredible. Now, if we dive back to, say, Africa, what legal structures do you think could enhance relationships between the continent, African countries?
Um, I think I don't. I mean, when I grew up, there was so much. I grew up in Southern Africa, so we grew up and we learned about SADC. About the collaboration between the countries,
Right.
the ability to move visa free and free trade. And it seems to be going backwards. The world seems to be going backwards. I mean, it's the same in the West. So when you used to look at Brexit and we seem to be going backwards. And I feel that is such a shame. What I'd like to see is definitely more collaboration in Africa.
Right.
As I think when we had the event on the weekend, one of the ladies said, "I'm a Pan-Africanist,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
don't care about the borders.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
feel African, and I just want to see more collaboration." So I'm delighted to be part of the first business council, one of the first business councils, and I'd like to see more. And I'd like to see more interaction with the African councils with all the others. Because
Right.
look at me, I'm British born Zimbabwean, so I have that. I have basically, two cultures which make me what I am today. So that collaboration really needs to continue.
That's amazing. And what advice would you have for, young aspiring Africans that are looking to seek a career here or set up a business?
For those looking to be professionals, I really think internships, really doing your homework, finding ways to stand out. I love seeing the youth on LinkedIn. I love seeing their articles. I like seeing those that are really sharing content of value. Um,
So that works, eh?
it works
Okay.
if you share content of value. So where you are, I mean, a lot of youth now are misusing the platform and maybe making it Facebook or Instagram, and that's a shame. But if you figure out exactly what the business community in your industry, whatever your industry, are looking for, that really is valuable. I can't stress enough on internships. I can't stress enough on networking. I really don't believe in sitting behind a computer and sending 20 to 30 applications. I think it's a waste of time. I think we live in Dubai, I live in Dubai, which is tiny. It's not difficult to find out exactly what's going on in the city.
Correct. And there's so many things going on.
There's so many things going on. I mean, we had COP28.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And you're able to access key decision makers in the UAE, perhaps easier than you can elsewhere.
Absolutely.
So use that opportunity, find out where the decision makers are, and make sure that you're there.
That's amazing. And what do you see as the future of Africans in the UAE, Thenji?
I think we're going to see more leaders. I think we're going to see more African businesses. I've been here, 13 years, and we didn't have the All Africa Festival. I am, delighted to see the festival next month, which is being one of the co-founders, Nina, I was talking to recently, and the plans that they have there to showcase African culture.
Absolutely.
That wouldn't have happened 13 years ago. I see so many businesses, so many restaurants, the cuisine. And we collaborated this weekend with a small African business, Afro Baobab. And she's all about, making sure that we understand her culture, her food, and the music from West Africa. So delighted.
We were really transported to West Africa at the
weekend.
Weren't we?
Exactly. Sounds from Mali. So I think I'm really excited about what the future holds for Africans in the UAE.
Wonderful. So you would encourage Africans considering the UAE to make the move then?
Absolutely.
Exciting times.
I think this is the kind of the world of opportunity.
Absolutely.
And now is time. If you're not here, then get here.
Absolutely. Now, just to segue back, we had this event at the weekend. We were doing our vision boards. I'd love for you to share maybe one thing that is on your vision board this year.
Sleep.
You spoke a lot about that.
Actually, in the importance of it, I think I underestimated that. So that's one of my personal goals. And to we spoke about being intentional, really focused. I do a lot, and perhaps sometimes I do too much. So really looking at streamlining where I spend my time and what I spend my time doing. Impact is high up. Impact in terms of, especially for African women, is high up on the agenda, and the exciting initiatives that are coming my way. I feel really excited about 2024.
Fantastic. On the sleep component, and I'm not wearing it now, but I recently got an Aura ring.
Right.
To monitor my sleep. I'd advise you to...
I'll definitely look into that.
To get one. And impact obviously is, I think, should be a running theme irrespective. Now, anybody watching who's potentially considering visiting Zimbabwe, I've never been. I've been to South Africa, but not Zimbabwe. Tell us why we should consider visiting Zimbabwe.
Well, the Victoria Falls. That's the one. So last Christmas, not this one, the one before, 30 about 30 members of my family, we went out to Zimbabwe.
Okay.
We spent a week at the Victoria Falls. And just the activities, from safaris and helicopter rides and just walking through the rainforest of the Victoria Falls.
It's
I know
amazing.
we always argue with the Zambians as to
Yeah.
who has the better side. I still say Zimbabwe has the better side, but it's absolutely amazing. And if you haven't been there, you need to put it on your list of things to do.
Fantastic. Well, I love nature, coming from Kenya. It's second
Yes.
nature to us. But yeah, Victoria Falls is definitely on the list. Now, just before we close, Thenji, I'd like to ask, what is your definition of happiness?
Ooh. Um, Being content is really what I strive to be. Content in all areas. So a personal life, a spiritual life, being content with family, and even when difficult situations come, and they do come,
Yeah.
being able to, rely on. I'm Christian, so I rely on God to see me through. So that element of being content in all things is where I'd like to be.
Wonderful. And with that, we've come to the end. And if you've enjoyed the conversation, then I invite you to join us. We have so many exciting things planned for the near future. So stay tuned and please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and engage with us in the comments. And do join our community as we continue to have conversations that inspire success. Thank you.